What's good, YouTube? It's your boy, Blueblood Sports TV, back at y'all with another one. So, 4-division world champion Mexican superstar boxer, who is currently the unified super middleweight world champion. He holds the WBC, he holds the WBA, he holds the WBO, and he holds the Ring Magazine super middleweight world titles, that being superstar boxer Saul Canelo Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez, he weighs in on the highly anticipated massive undisputed showdown that just took place this past weekend in the junior middleweight division, 154-pound division, between Argentina WBO undefeated star boxer Brian Castano and two-time junior middleweight world champion, who is the unified junior middleweight world champion. Just like Canelo Alvarez, he holds the WBC, the WBA, the IBF, and the Ring Magazine. So, with that said, Jermell Charlo, superstar boxer, he holds the IBF. Canelo Alvarez holds the WBO. Vice versa, okay? Canelo Alvarez is looking to pick up that the IBF strap from undefeated IBF super middleweight world champion superstar boxer Caleb Sweethand Plant in September, and Jermell Charlo was attempting to pick up that WBO strap from Brian Castano this past weekend, and the fight ended in a controversial draw. With that said, Canelo Alvarez, he weighed in and he said that essentially it was a robbery. He says that Brian Castano clearly won this fight. He says that Brian Castano, did everything in his power to win the fight and just wasn't awarded the victory. Okay? Unfortunately, in this situation, he didn't get the victory. Okay? So he stated that, it was bad judges' scorecards. One judge had it, 114-114 draw. The other judge had it, 114-113 in favor of Brian Castano. And the other judge had it, 117-111 for Jermell Charlo, which was a huge disappointment, because that means Jermell Charlo won 9 rounds to 3, when 72% of the fans, after Showtime took a vote, stated that Brian Castano won the fight. So with that said, Canelo Alvarez has been, ironically enough, he's been the victor in situations where people thought that it was a robbery on his part. The Erislandy Lara fight, most people thought Canelo Alvarez lost that fight. The Floyd Mayweather fight, one judge had it a draw. At least in the ring, Canelo Alvarez said, that's not right, that was incorrect. Floyd Mayweather clearly won the fight. And the Gennady Triple G Golovkin 2 fights, people felt like Canelo Alvarez got the edge, and that Canelo Alvarez, if you don't knock out Canelo Alvarez, the judges is not going to give you a victory in favor of Canelo Alvarez. Okay? So with that said, ironically enough, Canelo Alvarez is complaining about judges' scorecards. It's the worst kept secret in the sport of boxing, that if you don't knock out Canelo Alvarez, the judges are not going to give you the fight. So ironically enough, Canelo Alvarez is complaining that Brian Castano was robbed in the fight. Like I said, we saw the open scorecards when Canelo Alvarez, when he fought Austin Trout. Many people complained that the fight was at least a draw, or 1 round separated to, when they had the open scoring, and they announced that they had Canelo Alvarez up massively in a fight that was very, very close against Austin Trout. Then Austin Trout, he knew about the judges' scorecards, and he had to go for it. He made a mistake. He got dropped, and essentially that was all but it. Like I said, the Erislandy Lara fight with Canelo Alvarez, most people thought that Erislandy Lara won the fight. He didn't get the nod. A judge had a draw. Floyd Mayweather essentially won every single round against Canelo Alvarez, and a judge saw the draw. And like I said, to Canelo Alvarez's defense in the ring, he gestured and said, oh, that's not right. He clearly won the fight. But again, it's the worst kept secret in the sport of boxing. If you don't get a knockout versus Canelo Alvarez, you're not going to get a victory. You're not going to win on the judges' scorecards. So with that, it's ironic. It's the irony of it. But in the same token, I personally thought that Brian Castano won this fight. I thought he had the more effective aggression. I thought that he was landing the bigger, cleaner punches outside of the 2nd and 10th round. See, Jermell Charlo won those rounds so handily, so big, in such a dramatic way and fashion that it overshadows everything Brian Castano did. And it was an indication that if Jermell Charlo, who seemed to uncharacteristically not throw his jab, and so essentially you want to say, well, what's wrong with Jermell Charlo? Because we know that's not the Jermell Charlo we're used to seeing. And so you want to give him the benefit of the doubt, because it's like, he can apply his jab. Now, was it that everybody underestimated Brian Castano, his ring IQ, his how effective his aggression is, how he gets the job done? Did we underestimate Brian Castano to the point where even Jermell Charlo underestimated Brian Castano, and Brian Castano, he confused Jermell Charlo with his effective aggression and how he works, how he's calculated with it, how he gets his way to the inside, being at such a size disadvantage. And Jermell Charlo, prior to the fight, everybody would say that Jermell Charlo was clearly the better skilled fighter. Jermell Charlo being 6 feet tall with a 74-inch arm reach, and Brian Castano being at 5'7.5" with a 67-inch arm reach, meaning Jermell Charlo had a 4-inch height advantage, and Jermell Charlo had a 7-inch arm reach advantage. And to be the bigger, better athlete that is more skilled, technically sound, and has a beautiful jab that can keep Brian Castano at bay, control the pace of the fight, and control the distance. And he didn't do that. He was unable to do that. And because he was unable to do that, do we give Jermell Charlo the benefit of the doubt because we say, well, he just didn't seem to be himself? Right? Because you look at the fight as a judge and you say, well, when he let his hands go and when he used his jab, it wasn't close. Right? When he used his jab and he controlled the distance and he let his hands go and he was aggressive, he controlled the fight handedly. The example is round 2, the second round, and round 10. Straight right hands, hooks, counter punches, accuracy. Does that, get the judges to sway the judges and say, well, if he lets his hands go, give him the benefit of the doubt. If he did this, if he did that, so you can't score it in favor of Brian Castano because it's just simply what Jermell Charlo's not doing? Because I can understand that. Because I came away from the fight saying that Jermell Charlo should have won. Now, Brian Castano won the fight in my opinion, but I feel like Jermell Charlo should have won, if that makes sense. I believe that Jermell Charlo had all the skills. Jermell Charlo, he showed us that this could have been an easy fight. No slight to Brian Castano, and his abilities. And I'm one to admit, I stand corrected, that I thought that I underestimated Brian Castano and his abilities, his skill set, his technique, his ring IQ ultimately, and his savviness to overcome his size disadvantages against his opponents, to be able to work his way in the inside and be effective on the inside where he needs to be in his opponent's chest, because he's at such a size disadvantage. I likened it to Sean Porter. It doesn't have the power. Sean Porter doesn't have the power, but his activeness, his busyness, he overwhelms his opponent. And that's what Brian Castano did. And you go back and look at my fight prediction, which I predicted Jermell Charlo win a 5th round knockout, and I was completely wrong. But I likened and compared Brian Castano's style to Sean Porter's style. They have a controlled, effective aggressiveness. I just didn't think that he had the athletic ability and the quickness to be able to withstand Jermell Charlo's jab, his technical skills to overcome that. And so while I'm watching the fight, I want to say, hey, man, Jermell Charlo should win this round. Jermell Charlo, man, let your hands go. You know, it gets frustrating. Let your hands go. Let your jab go. Even you heard his trainer, who is a well-renowned trainer, future Hall of Famer, 2-time Trainer of the Year. He has 2 unified world champions, an undefeated unified welterweight world champion, who's the WBC IBF welterweight world champion superstar boxer, and Earl the True Spence Jr. is widely considered to be top 3 best pound-for-pound fighters in the world. And so when you look at what Derrick James was telling him, and Derrick James continued to tell him, use your jab. Your jab is going to set up everything. Use your jab. And he just was reluctant to do so. And you saw when Derrick James told him, you're losing, you need a knockout, and the urgency kicked in, he was a completely different fighter. And you say, why aren't you doing this all the time? And again, I don't want to take anything away from Brian Castano, because maybe it's the fact that what Brian Castano was doing that made Jermell Charlo hesitant to not do what we think he could have done to be victorious in this fight. And so with that said, Canelo Alvarez, I look at it and I say, you know, obviously Canelo Alvarez, and here's another thing. Canelo Alvarez is always going to side with his Latino family. He's never going to go against that. In a fight where Brian Castano won the fight, I thought he did enough to win the fight. I think in a rematch, Jermell Charlo will knock him out. But nonetheless, Canelo Alvarez calls Brian Castano and lets him know, I'm in your corner, and I thought you won the fight. That's something that African-American black boxers just simply don't do. Okay? Especially at the highest level. So, with that said, it's ironic that Canelo Alvarez would say that Brian Castano was robbed, when the worst kept secret in the sport of boxing is, if you don't knock out Canelo Alvarez, regardless of what you do, you're not going to get a decision. So Brian Castano, Jermell Charlo, seems that we're going to get a rematch in the fall, and I can't wait. Can't wait. As we saw Erickson the Hammer Lubin, who fought Jermell Charlo and was knocked out by Jermell Charlo. Erickson Lubin, his coach, well-renowned coach Kevin Cunningham, he just stated that they're not going to get this WBC. They're the WBC mandatory challenger. They fought already. Jermell Charlo knocked them out, but he said that we're not going to get the rematch. We're not going to get the rematch in our mandatory opportunity right now. So we're looking for another opponent. That's a clear indication that we're going to get the rematch between Castano and Jermell Charlo, in which I believe Jermell Charlo will get the knockout victory. So let's see how this plays out. But Canelo Alvarez, he's right that I thought Brian Castano won the fight, but to feel like for Canelo Alvarez to say that the judges robbed Brian Castano is very, very ironic. That's all I got for y'all. Make sure you hit the like button. Drop a comment in the comment section. Let me know what y'all think. Y'all already know what it is. It's your boy Blue Blood Sports TV. Hate, like, comment, and subscribe. You haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the bell icon to get all the new notification. Follow me on Instagram at Blue Blood Sports TV, all one word. Y'all already know what it is. Shout out to the entire LDBC. Shout out to New Media. Shout out to Black Media Row. Make sure you like and share the videos. That's all I got for y'all. Peace.
Hi, my name is R0BBED, and you're watching Blue Blood Sports TV.